let's bring its leader, Nigel Farage, into the conversation. Well, first off, congratulations to you and all your colleagues. You've obviously had a stonking night, Mr Farage. I note your candidate in Lincolnshire says this is a party that is putting families first. What do we mean by that? What does that mean? Mr Farage, morning.
Yeah, good morning. No, it's an extraordinary night. I mean, the victory in Runcorn and Helsby, it may be by a small margin, but it's a huge win. And this is one of Labour's safest seats in the country. If I said to you a year ago, Reform would win this by-election, you'd look at me as if I came from Mars. But it's interesting because we're biting deep into the Labour vote here. We came within a whisker of winning the mayorships of Doncaster, of North Tyneside, once again, traditional Labour areas where you would normally weigh the vote. And at the same time, you've just reported on the astonishing margin of victory for Andrea Jenkyns in Lincolnshire, classic Conservative territory. So we've taken big chunks out of Conservative, out of Labour, and I think, it's a very significant moment. My sort of biggest observation, looking at the results, is there are now large parts of England, majority of England, in which we are now clearly the main challenger party to Labour. And actually, if you vote Conservative, you're in danger of ending up with Labour, and that really, for me, is the big message.
What's the next big movement or moment for Reform?
Well, the next big plan will be, and I've been planning for today ever since the 5th of July last year, after I won a seat in the general election. The next big plan are the Welsh and Scottish Parliament elections, which take place next year. If you believe the current polling, we're pretty much neck and neck to be the biggest party in Wales. So, lots more planning, lots more preparation, lots more building, lots more professionalising. But no, we are very, very pleased across the board with how well we're doing.
And lots more dealing. If I take you to Northumberland, Mr Farage, there's no overall control there, but you and the Conservatives obviously could put a pact together. The likelihood, Mr Farage?
Well, that would depend. I mean, we've fought these county elections, Nick, saying that we're deeply dissatisfied with many of the long-term contracts that have been signed. We can't comprehend why so much money is paid to consultants, why so much money is paid to temporary workers. We question why these county councils are getting involved in, issues such as climate change. We really wonder why people are allowed to work from home. So the only conditions upon which we do a deal with anybody is if the other party, whether it's Conservative, Labour, whatever it might be, agree to reduce the size of local government, to stop the waste and expenditure, to have a sort of Doge-like inquiry, if you like, and that's what we will be demanding.
All right, a narrow margin, 6 votes. How might that have been influenced if the Prime Minister had actually gone to Runcorn? Will he be ruining that decision this morning?
Well, we might have won by 600. I don't know. But it does show. It says a lot about Keir Starmer. Everything is caution, caution, caution. And you do really, nearly 10 months into this government, ask yourself a question. What does this man actually stand for? Because, frankly, no one knows.
All right. What do the celebrations look like this morning, Mr Farage?
It's a bit messy in this room. I'm standing outside. There's seem to be a few empty glasses all around the place. So perhaps I'll go and fill one up.
All right. Congratulations to you and your team. It's an extraordinary victory that you pulled off. Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK.
Yes, Nick. So just a state of play right now. Of course, Reform, very much the story of the night, as we expected, won that by-election by just 6 votes. So that is a serious, serious defeat for Labour. Starmer failing his first electoral test. And elsewhere, they are picking up council seats a lot. The Tories down at 50 at the moment, so a poor night for them. Labour just about holding, and that seems to be the theme of the night too. They have, however, held on to those mayoralties in Doncaster, North Tyneside and the west of England, despite some really serious opposition from Reform. They are doing very well in second place there and have taken, of course, their first mayoralty. Other patterns we're seeing, apart from the teal tidal wave that we have very much seen tonight, those huge swings to Reform. Fascinating stuff, and you just heard from a very happy Nigel Farage this morning. Reform are taking seats now off both Labour and the Conservatives. They are no longer just the party which is eating into Kemi Badenoch's vote. They are now a headache for both Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch. So that is also going to be a real threat to the chances of a majority for any political party at the next election. If the polls continue like this, we are on course for a hung parliament. Of course, it's very early to be making any of these predictions, but it just goes to show exactly what is going to be done here. Now, Labour say that by-election shows very unique events. Mike Amesbury, of course, the MP that punched his constituent. They say those are unique events that made it harder, but voters, of course, still furious, want to see that faster change. But Nick, this morning we've already heard from the Doncaster Mayor, Ros Jones. She is very angry with Sir Keir Starmer already. She just a few minutes after she won, she hit out at Keir Starmer talking about winter fuel, benefits cuts and the national insurance rise. It's very much far from a happy ship in the Labour Party at the moment. And of course, the Tory vote totally collapsing. It's going to be a very tough night for Kemi Badenoch. Farage is saying that he is now the party of opposition. I am very confident that this weekend we'll see some grumbling about Kemi Badenoch's position and whether she is still the person to lead the Tories.
Right, you go get some rest. Natasha Clark, LBC's political editor, who of course has been on air since 10. Natasha, thank you for that. 21 after 7. Gosh, I'll take you back now a few years. Sir John, do we have a Rosie Barnes SDP Greenwich moment here? Good morning to you, Governor.
Well, that's one possible analogy. The other possible analogy is this is a Hamilton moment. That, of course, was the first by-election that the SNP managed to win, and now the SNP are been running the Scottish government for well over a decade. So sometimes parliamentary by-elections don't mean anything. Sometimes they do. And I think, in truth, if all we were seeing today was the Reform doing well in Runcorn, but perhaps not doing terribly well in the local council elections, that might be a reasonable interpretation. However, the local council election results, limited though they are as they are in so far, are really just in line with the message of the opinion polls. The Reform are now significant players, at least for the time being, in our electoral politics, and they do challenge the traditional dominance of Conservative and Labour. Reform have won more seats and they have won more votes in the results that have been declared overnight, and they're probably heading for control of a couple of councils.
Who should be more rattled this morning, Sir John? Kemi Badenoch or Sir Keir Starmer?
I think the honest truth is that they're probably both equally rattled. Kemi Badenoch, it's certainly clear that the Conservative vote is the one that's down by far the most, as compared with 4 years ago when the seats were last up for grabs. It's down by about 25 points in the early results. And so to that extent, at least, the message to the Conservatives is they're still very, very clearly in the doldrums. But the problem that Ms Badenoch faces is that her task is no longer, as perhaps she once thought of it, as being simply to try and be able to defeat Labour, to focus on Labour, to criticise Labour. She also does have to deal with Reform because, in particular, where Reform did particularly well, it was the Conservatives who did badly. But, as Natasha has already quite rightly said, it's also quite clear, however, that Reform support is now of a sufficient size that even if they're predominantly picking up votes from the Conservatives, that can still be good enough, together with picking up some votes off Labour, for them to win seats from Labour too. In Northumberland, for example, I think it was the first 9 Labour seats to be declared. All of them went to Reform.
When you ask Nigel Farage what lies behind this extraordinary success, one of the first reasons he comes up with is it's the people who actually get up in the morning, their alarm clocks sound, they get on buses, they get on trains and they go to work and they resent their taxes going up to pay for others. Valid in your view, Sir John?
It's certainly, on the evidence I've seen, that there is indeed a bit of a difference between the character support for Reform and that for UKIP. In the case of UKIP, I would say the characterisation that there were voters who particularly wanted lower taxes would be wrong. In the case of Reform supporters, there is some truth to that, but the truth is that the thing that above all distinguishes Reform voters is that, 1, they support Brexit, and 2, they are deeply concerned about immigration, though, and at the same time, like lots of other people, are also unhappy about the economy and about the state of the health service. But it's those 2 issues that particularly distinguish Reform voters. And to that extent, at least, I think it's a mistake to think of it as simply a broad brush protest vote. Yes, it is a lot of people who are unhappy, but it's the people who also have certain views who have decided to express their unhappiness in a particular way.
Lastly, because I know you have to move on, 6 votes at Runcorn, Sir John. A constituency that was not visited by the Prime Minister. Will he be rueing that decision? Could it have made a difference? You're the expert.
Well, who knows? But the truth is, you and Nick, I think, are old enough in the tooth, like I am, to know that the convention used to be the Prime Minister's never visited by-elections. It was only relatively recently that it was broken. So I think one might say that Sir Keir Starmer decided to restore an old tradition.
Always good speaking with you. Thanks for your time, John. Professor Sir John Curtice, polling expert, the best in the business, Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. So if you're lucky enough to be a student learning under that professor, you're very fortunate indeed.